Recording.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Let's rock. We are off to the races here on another special episode. You guys know out there, I like to do my special episodes. Keeps things kind of fresh around here, especially in the strongman community. With the Christmas special, we did, of course, and we did our what was it? Our New Year's special, of course, with World's Strongest Opinions, and with Yanni's Strongest Personalities. And of course, now this one here, kind of doing solo. However, I did reach out to those guys and got some opinions on this show, which, oh, by the way, without any further ado, welcome to, what are we calling this, Cody?
The Fit Jacked Gym Life, Joe's everything.
Yeah, it
His
really
opinion.
is. It's a big mess, isn't it? Yeah, with me today, guys, is my producer, Cody Rebarger. And not an easy name to pronounce if you actually read it, which I'm surprised I even get it right. It took me about, 5 years, I think?
I'm surprised. I honestly was not expecting you to get it right.
Surprise. Welcome to the new year, my friend. So I actually brought a co-host on this episode, or co-host, I say producer, because that's kind of more where his representation is going to be on the show, to keep me down the path without rambling and losing focus on where I'm at on all this stuff. Because as you guys know, I historically, that's kind of the traps I fall in that I plant for myself here. So Cody's going to keep me on task, and hopefully he'll be around for future episodes as well to do the same thing. But in any case, we reached out to a bunch of people within the strongman community, got some opinions on what collectively, kind of subjectively, of course, what we think are some of the better and most interesting shows to keep an eye on in 2023 in the strongman community. And let me define that. But interesting, we mean some we expect to do really well, some we expect to do better than they did last year, and some we're keeping our fingers crossed that they can manage it to keep the wheels on the wagon, and not in a bad way. We're not rooting against them, because they could be tremendous shows themselves if they're produced correctly and promoted correctly. So, and we'll get to those, and we'll give you our reasons why we like these shows. But a big thanks to, of course, Darren and John from World's Strongest Opinions, and of course, Strongest Personalities with Yanni. Thank you for giving me some feedback. Mike Lohman, the Iron Rook, of course, all these other guys that I reach out to on a daily basis. You know who we are, or you are. So if I forgot your name, well, I'll get you on the next episode. So here we are. We're talking about the best shows to keep an eye on in 2023. We'll shorten that title at some point when we make a thumbnail, but right now that's kind of what we're thinking. Our criteria for this was to find shows that we felt were very unique in the strongman community, because there are so many shows these days, guys. As we all know, probably, I'm guessing, over 150 when they're all finally put on Iron Podium. And listen, if these shows weren't on Iron Podium, I'm not finding them. So if you guys are going to say, well, you forgot this show, forgot that show, I get it. There's a lot of them that aren't posted out there yet. I'm going to mention those. And there are quite a few that, quite frankly, don't post on Iron Podium, which eludes me entirely. I don't understand why any promoter wouldn't post on Iron Podium. Some of you out there think it's strictly a USS thing. It's not. There are Strongman Corporation shows on that site as well. So I'm not sure why some promoters do, some promoters don't. And then, of course, if you go to Iron Podium, and this is a shout out to Iron Podium because they're just a great resource for the strongman community, there are other events posted on there as well, which we can all appreciate. Some unsanctioned events, which I think we can appreciate. We don't always have to compete through an organization. We love the sport. We support the sport. You can compete through anybody you want to compete. We're not loyal here, I'll tell you. We just love the strongman community. With that said, there's also some cool Highland Games stuff on there. Like seeing that. Cody, did you catch that, all the Highland Games stuff?
I haven't looked yet, but I definitely will now. That's something that I've been interested in trying out. So
it's nice. It's nice they're putting it in there. Yeah, right? Because it really does cross over well to the strongman community. We're getting a lot more shows now that are kind of hybriding that a little bit. When I competed up at Beaver Island, probably 10 years ago, probably one of the last Highland Game shows I did before my comeback, they, of course, always have something like a farmer's carry or a Hughesfelt stone carry or some type of stone or shield carry at these events, which was always fun, of course, because that was my wheelhouse going into these games. But, nowadays, these strongman, or I should say these Highland Games promoters, are starting to kind of cross-promote a bit with the strongman community, which I think, of course, makes it super fun. And you guys know how I love my crossover sports here. So,
well, I mean, we always like to say powerlifting is strongman's cousin and vice versa. But honestly, Highland Games and strongman are much closer related.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, ancient and ancestors of one another for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you've got, you throw the hay bale, and now we do that with sandbags or kegs. And
Yes.
you've got the stones, and now we do it with farmer handles. And basically, it's just tearing up the land. But instead of machines, you are the machine. You do all the work.
Yeah, we are the horses, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to that, that's kind of the way both those sports sort of originated.
Yeah.
What do we got in the barn? Let's throw it around, or
Yeah.
what do we got on the land that we're working? So, but let's get on with this show. Without any further ado, welcome to 2023's shows to look out for. I will say one more thing. We didn't obviously do this show at the first of the year, so there were several shows that we didn't have an opportunity to put on this list. I think we would have. One of them would have been the Bricktown Classic. I think one of them, of course, would have been the Battle Axe Barbell Show. That would have been on here for sure. So just off the top of my head, those two would have probably made the list otherwise. And there'll probably be a few that come into this list late throughout the season that, of course, we'll talk about a little bit. But for right now, what's our first one on our top 10 list?
So we're going to start off with the Ragnarok.
The Ragnarok. This is a real interesting one. Wow, you're just going big right off the gate, aren't you?
It was the first one you gave me, so I'm just going.
Okay. All right. Well, the Ragnarok games. This is interesting. There's a lot of the strongman community that's kind of got an eye on this show that I don't think have talked about it much or claimed this show to be a part of kind of the community at large as we know it, right? I think that's safe to say. The Ragnarok games, of course, is a big game going down in Miami. That's on February 24th, 25th. Is that what you got on that?
25th and 26th.
25th and 26th. Miami Convention Center, right outside the airport down there. The guy's name is Ralph. You didn't get that, did you?
I didn't. No.
Okay. I actually thought I wrote it down too. Any case, Avalon, I think. He's a big promoter of these Ragnarok games. So I think he's done another one in the past. This one here will be one of the biggest shows in the country outside of nationals. When it goes off. It's obviously going off. I think it made people feel a little bit more comfortable going into the show that there started to be some bigger names attached to it. Because I think in the first few months when this show came out, if you looked at that list, there weren't hardly any names I even recognized. And I'm not claiming to know everybody in the strongman community, but it's rare if I look at 150 names and go, I don't know one of these people on this list.
Right.
That's what we saw kind of at the Ragnarok games in the beginning. Now, this is unusual. You're not going to get a lot of guys that compete in this show. You got 10 events in this show. I think it's 5 on Saturday, Saturday or something like that, 5 on Sunday, the way this is going to kind of fall off. And they're all excruciating events as well. I looked at all those events. I didn't see like really any gimmies in there. You want to read those events off?
Yeah. So there's a Thor hammer hold. There's deadlift for reps, log for reps, deadlift medley. So there's 2 deadlift events. You've got the stone over. You've got the max circus dumbbell for reps, a super heavy yoke, 2 mystery events, so 1 per day, and then a Husafel carry as well. Although I think the mystery event 2 and Husafel are together. So it's kind of it's a carry at least, and there's something else attached to it.
God, think about posterior chain over those 2 days.
Right.
Holy hell. That's a ton. Listen, I think the person who wins this show or these classes is a superhero in that sense, is the way we look at this. It's going to take an athlete for sure.
Yeah.
What got me kind of thinking against it was being a master and competing in this competition. That's what's going to impress me the most. Right. To see if these old guys can actually make it through. And there's some good old guys there. Listen, I think Travis Ortmeyer's competing in this. So he's one of the names that I picked up on right away. Nico Chaparellis is competing as a pro in this. Nico's a little grayer than most, but I don't think he's quite 40 yet. So he'd still be considered one of the younger guys in this. Of course, I think we have Ryan Finnerty is competing in this as well. Big guy himself is a pro. And that's Nadia Stower's lifting partner. She's also competing in this. So, there's some names all of a sudden that are kind of going to be thrown around in this mix of sort of unknowns. And to no disrespect out of any of you out there that are competing in this show, I just don't recognize a lot of you. It is pretty international, though. I did notice there's a ton of people coming from across the pond, of course, a couple athletes from Australia.
I believe it said 45 countries will be represented in this.
Yeah.
So over 200 athletes in about 45 different countries.
Yeah, which of course, again, surprised me as well, because being a newer show, it certainly has been taken to and gravitated towards by a large swath of the international strongman public. It just outside of Instagram, you're not hearing a lot about it. You get in some of these conversations with other strongmen and strong women. Not anybody's really saying a lot about it, but of course they've got their athletes, they got their event set up, and they're ready to rock and roll out there. So that is the first interesting show of 2023 on this particular list. I think worth noting, of course, the Ragnarok Games. I'm rooting for it. Listen, I'm rooting for it. I'd love to see this go well.
Well, we're used to 2-day events being just the top of the line athletes, all the top 10 big names that we know. We don't see a whole lot of these amateur shows being 2 days anymore. It's always just like a 1 day for amateur shows. And now that, it's nice to see a big weekend event again.
Yeah. Outside of OSG, you're not really seeing it like that.
Right. Yeah.
And interesting enough to kind of piggyback your thought there, in OSG, like a Clash or something like that, that's a 2-day event. It's all these really big names.
Yeah.
But you're really seeing like 40 or 50 guys in a single class that maybe are here to make a name for themselves.
Yeah.
And I think you can argue anybody that wins the show, you're not going to forget who he is.
Right.
It's going to be pretty impressive. So good for you gals. Good for you guys out there competing in the Ragnarok Games. We're rooting for you. And of course, we'll give the shout out to you guys as we see some of these results come in as well. Maybe we'll do a follow-up to these shows as we move throughout the season. What's our next one?
So we've got the Miami Baddest.
Yeah, Miami's Baddest. April 8th. I know that. Michael De Palma is the promoter of this show, athlete himself. He comes with a high, what do you want to say? People really respect the hell out of this guy. And everybody that I spoke to about this show, because I don't know a lot about Miami's Baddest. I know it's the 7th year they've been doing this show. So it's certainly not a show that's, it's not a new show anymore. So it's got a little history, which I love. I think we can all appreciate a show that's stuck around a while, that's built a bit of history.
Right.
That means people appreciate this show and want to win it down there. Miami's Baddest, who doesn't want to compete Miami? Listen, the full Florida scene in general is a big strength scene down there. When I looked at that roster early, there wasn't an awful lot of guys on it yet. However, I have no doubt that show's pretty much going to fill up before it's all said and done, as most of these shows we're talking about today will. What are the events in that?
So you've got a log, clean and press, max attempt. So you get 3 attempts with that. You get the axle deadlift for reps, heavy yoke, a burden run, which was a carry and drag, and then stone to shoulder for reps, which we spent so many years seeing sandbag to shoulder. So I always like stones, and I'm happy to see stone to shoulder coming back in any of these.
Yeah, I guess Cerberus isn't sponsoring this event.
No, Strongman Core is, but
okay. Yeah, and no knock on you, Cerberus. We love you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hear you. I love the idea that the stone to shoulder is coming back in a few of these events that I've seen, because it is a bit different of a technique there. Loading a stone, it's a more of a movement thing, and on a pop, it's a triple extension in itself coming up to the shoulder with that.
But then also the balance, that
absolutely,
you have to have at the top there, because it's so easy for it to fall right off.
No, I like seeing that too. And as you know, I almost blew my bicep out on the sandbag. So anytime I don't see a sandbag to shoulder anymore, I'm very, very happy for everybody there. And we'll talk about something else along those lines here in a minute. So yeah, anyhow, Miami's Baddest. This is their 7th edition of that show. A lot of guys that I spoke with, again, had a lot of great things to say about the promoter, Michael De Palma. And I have no reason to believe, because these people are such great sources, that won't be a great show. And I was glad to add it to the list, because when somebody comes with that big a review, of course, it's worth mentioning. So Miami's Baddest, that's 2nd on that list. What's 3rd?
We are going to skip to the Alabama Strongest.
Oh, boy. This one, to me, if I can make it to another show this year, I would love to make it to Alabama's Strongest there. And that, of course, is in the Gulf Coast. Tyler Davis told me about this show. Oh boy, 6-7 months ago, I guess, when I interviewed him, long before his win at SCL, or his ultimate win and his OSG win, he was talking about, listen, if you make any show down in Alabama, make it to that Gulf Coast Alabama Strongest. 145 people in that show.
Yeah.
And it is a fucking party, from what he tells me. It is a great time to be down there. And what I love about Alabama and that scene down there, because of Strong Crew, Tyler Davis, and of course, Alabama's Strongest, which if you follow them on Instagram, guys, Alabama's Strongest. I always follow those guys. I appreciate everything they're doing. They're essentially an IG page that's representing the whole state or community down there at large, even kind of the border states that are a part of that strong crew sort of group down there and that whole Alabama group. And listen, there's no other reason to love Alabama than Tyler Davis and Hannah Lindsay, two of my favorite people. Of course, you as well, Thomas. Won't forget about you. But I got to get down there. And if I get to a second show or third show this year that's not on my list, that's first to get to, of course, Alabama's strongest. What are the events on that show?
So we've got a log ladder. We've got axle deadlift for reps, which they have a choice. You can either do a light or a heavy deadlift.
Love that.
Obviously, the light is worth less points than the heavy.
Right. One rep on a heavy will beat any number on the light.
And you can swap between the two, it sounded like, at any point. So
there's points involved.
Yeah, so there's points, and it seems like there's strategy that you kind of want to do. Do you want to build up a lot on the lights? Do you want to do just light? Do you want to just try to go all out with the heavy? Do you want to mix? So that's kind of where the strategy will come in.
I like that. Yep.
There's a carry medley, which is a 1-2-1. So you've got an iron cross, fire hydrant, and iron cross again. Then you've got the tug of war, and then you got stones over bar. And as I was going through these, I was realizing like a lot of these are, especially those last 3 events, are very much bicep heavy events.
Yeah.
So that's why I was laughing a little bit when you were talking about how, you really want to get to this one, talking about how the sandbag almost blew out your bicep.
You're telling me to watch out is what you're doing. Yeah.
No, I mean, just be aware of it. Like, just keep that in mind.
But I think Tyler had it. I don't know if he's got anything to do with helping promote this show, but I thought he had a bicep injury as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've got that carry and the cross and the fire hydrant. I mean, those, you don't think about bicep when you're carrying, but when you've got weird events like that or weird shaped objects, your biceps take a lot. Tug of war.
Yeah, you know what though? When I think about kind of where these biceps injuries really stem from, it's that explosive movement.
Yeah,
when you're wrapped into a stone or a cross or something.
Yeah, it's more so not so much for injury, but more so endurance.
Yeah.
For this.
For sure.
Because you've got the carry medley, then you're going into a tug of war, and a tug of war at the size of what we're doing. When we were kids, it took us out. Took a lot of energy out. You throw a rope down, get a bunch of kids, make them tug on it, and then they're sleeping well for the rest of the night. Now you just okay. you add a couple.
That sounds like something that belongs in Alabama. Actually, it makes perfect sense to me. Yeah.
But I mean, you throw 200, 300, 400 pounds more per person on there, tugging on that, and you don't realize that's.
I'm not a big fan of the tug of war. I'm gonna be honest.
Not either.
There's a big disadvantage to some guys in that. Certainly in the open class. I mean, you can in the other classes not so much. There's a lot of equality there when it comes to kind of the size of these athletes, at least the weight of them. When you get into that open class, certainly the guy that's the heaviest generally is going to win that event.
Yeah, or at least
historically, even in a truck pull. Yeah, your positioning is big on that in the start, just like it is in a car or truck pull for sure. But
however, I mean, I've seen videos of Emma Jane Smith where she was knocked down and almost went out with the tug of war, and she got all the way to the line, and somehow she recovered and ended up pulling all the way back and winning that event. So,
it can make for some drama.
Exactly. Okay. And everyone knows what it's like to play tug of war. We can all.
It does resonate with a lot of people. We've all played it in gym class once or twice.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you've got that. And then the stones of bar. And again, not super heavy bicep movement. But if you think about, you just did deadlifts for reps. You just did a carry medley. You just did tug of war. And now the last event is stones over bar. And that's the one that you really have to pull out every last little bit that's left in you. So that's one of those things, if I was to give any advice, it'd be to train endurance for your biceps for this.
Well, listen, I certainly, anybody that's going to come to any one of these events we're talking about, I think we're going to be prepared for them. I don't see many novice classes in these events.
No, but that's the one takeaway I would have for people. Is if I was training someone for this, it would be that definitely.
Do you still have that? Did you still have the Alabama Strongest up there?
I can.
No, you don't have to. I just want to make sure everybody. We're trying to post all these kind of for you YouTubers out there. We're posting all these clips or these logos that we took off of the Iron Podium. I should have mentioned that as well. And not that you're not seeing that, but if you're listening to this and you want to go back to the broadcast itself to kind of see these, I think that's another thing I love about all these shows. Right, these promoters are getting pretty savvy in these designs, and I'm not going to lie. A couple of them that I actually went to. I stopped and took a peek because those posters got my attention.
Right.
If you're going to put that much into a poster, I want to see what you got behind the door there,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I studied design when I was in college. And that was always a big thing was you should be able to just convey what you're trying to sell.
Well, they certainly did.
Yeah.
What's the next one we got?
So we've got Ohio's Strongest.
Love this one. I absolutely love this one. I reached out to Alex and Dylan. I can't remember who I spoke to first or who I'm speaking to now a lot of times because those guys will get a hold of me, the promoters of this show. And as soon as I saw this show, of course, being right around the corner from where we're at here in the Great Lakes, Ohio's Strongest kind of is Ohio's Strongest Man these days, I guess. I don't know if there's a second show down there or not. And as you know, I have a history down there. I did win Ohio's Strongest Man a couple times. Just saying. It's on my resume.
Hey, I mean, Indiana, the strongest last year was Michigan people.
Yeah, well, they used to travel well. We used to love that. With smaller contingencies back then, when you only had 10 or 12 guys on any given state really competing in strongman, you had to travel as a group because you had to represent. You generally, promoter got a hold of you and said, hey, can you bring all your guys down to try to make a show to get 20, 30 guys together? So I love Ohio shows to begin with. I have a long history of competing in Ohio. But this particular show is a Clash for Nora. And it hits home with me. Hits home hard, as you know, because I battle with cancer myself. And anytime I see any kid that's dealing with cancer, like Nora has had to deal with, I think it's neuroblastoma. She is a fighter. And I love the fact that they're doing a show, a charity event. They've done other ones for her because she's been battling it for years and she's still fighting. And this show is for Nora. And I told them right away, I get choked up. Whew, God, talk about any sick kid, guys. I'm going to get choked up. I think it's a great, great show to be a part of. And I told them anything I can do to that show or for that show, I'm going to do. And that isn't even the reason I picked them. It's just that big of a show, too, because not only did I feel that way, and so many people have got the same bug I did for this show, and it really resonated with them to see this little girl. And we put a picture of her up for you guys can see her as well. And I'm sure there are other ways to give back to this show if you're not going to this show. And I should have reached out to those guys to find out how, and I will in the future as we're getting closer to this show. But they have 80 plus competitors in this show. I think at this point, they're going to be doing record breakers in this show. Just about the entire 64 pro class of women are going to come in to try to break a couple different records. I think it all started with the circus dumbbell record. I think Panda and Holly McRae and some others as well got involved in wanting to come out for that. Before you know it, 3 or 4 other girls, Kira Wixon got on board with that, as well as some other events that some other people wanted to break. Then all of a sudden they're reaching out to everybody saying, hey, you want to try to break a record? Let me know what it is. We'll get you on and we'll try to break the record here at this event. I believe they're still operating like that. So anybody out there that is one of those guys that just got a record in his back pocket he wants to break, and I believe it's through Strongman. No, is it? It's a Clash event, but it's still going to be a USS, I think. I guess I never checked that.
Yeah, I didn't. I would assume
USS. I think USS. I think historically they've been involved with each other at some of these shows. Although there's been a couple. But anyhow, we'll get to the bottom of that. That's one little caveat I forgot to figure out about this show, but I just love it. So it's going to, not only is it going to be a big show, and you've got a lot of big time names and people there. Sean Shoemaker, of course, is competing in the 105s. The 105 class is going to be a big show there. And then you've got all these guys like Pearson and Vaccio and Sikorsky, the judges, these masters guys, apparently that we all relegate to judges at some point in our careers. So I want far behind you guys, I'm sure. But for this particular show, I'm actually thinking about not only being there, but doing something competing, maybe an 18-inch deadlift record or something like that myself. But this is going to be a really fun show. As you guys heard from me just a few minutes ago, very, very close to my heart. I'm glad I could be a part of the show and give back to the show in any way I possibly can. And representing that Ohio Strongest and Clash for Nora is awesome. And you guys all need to take a look at this show. It's being promoted the right way. A lot of great people are involved in this show, and it's for a great cause. So that's high on my list. I would put that number one just by default because I'm cheering for Nora. But it certainly is going to be a good show despite that. And that's why, of course, it made our list this year. Anything to add?
We haven't gone over it.
Oh, events. Yeah, because there's one here I want to talk about.
So it starts off with a yoke to log. And so you carry the yoke and then you go right into the log for reps. It's going for the 18-inch deadlift max. Tire flip, which looks like it's going for that same thing that the Alabama is doing, either light or heavy. So you get a choice between those.
You said tire flip?
Tire flip.
Love it.
And then there's a carry medley between a keg, hydrant, and a barrel, and then a stone over bar. So again, kind of that same kind of warning for Alabama as it is for Ohio's, endurance for those.
Well, anymore, right? And especially if there's
a
high contingency of 105ers involved in any show, it's going to be fast these days.
Yeah.
I love the tire, guys. Hashtag bring the tire back.
Yeah.
You guys at Ohio Strongest have been listening. We need to bring the tire back. I'm so sick of this nonsense where the tire's blown out more biceps. That is not true.
And even if it
isn't. Listen, that sandbag has hurt more recently Jody Kennedy and others, or not Jody Kennedy. It's not, darn it. I'm getting all messed up in my names now. I just said two names at once there. Now I got to put them together. But you know who I'm talking about out there. In any case, the sandbag is a culprit in itself of blowing biceps out right now. So don't give me this tire blows a lot of bicep shit.
Well, I mean, any of these things can cause these. The only one that I'd make an argument that probably doesn't need to make a return is the fingers. Which that's not on here, but I'm just saying, like, as an event, that's like probably the most dangerous one that can just be skipped. That's the one where they got the giant poles. And you pushing it up, and then hope that it flips over.
Yeah, but if you look at, you're only saying that because of what we witnessed online the other day with that Hercules hold and the way that came back on that guy. Did you see that?
I didn't.
Oh my God, it about killed him. Honestly, God, that's a topic for another show.
But the fingers.
Generally, anybody who's running the fingers, like we saw at Clash last year, there's a group of volunteers right around that thing. I don't really ever see that being a big problem.
Yeah, I think because it was Big Laws. That was his worst injury. 1 year was he got, I think it came back and hit him either in the shoulder.
Oh wow.
Or,
okay.
Right. I think it's the shoulder and the neck. And he said that was probably his worst injury. So that's one of the only ones that I'm like, I don't know if it needs to make a return, but I think
I'm for it.
But for like same thing with the argument for tire flip. Like if you have injuries that are coming from these, then we need to learn how to train better or set these events up better. We don't have to get rid of them. We just got to do it better and smarter. So if we're bringing back the tire flip, I like the idea of, between the light or heavy choice. Like that's an interesting way to do it. You get less points if you go lighter, but it's your choice if you want to go that strategy. I think that's a smart way of like.
Yeah, I've seen that in a lot of different events with apparatus lately, and I think that's kind of fun when you have that choice. There was a big sandbag medley at one of the events, Clash or something for the ladies, where it was points per bag kind of thing, and. Certainly a different way to kind of calculate how you want to do it.
Yeah.
Ultimately, if you just go for the heavier one, even a couple reps generally will beat anything else out.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of women in that particular event, if I recall, that just weren't capable. So they had to be a little bit more strategic about what they were doing.
Yeah. I mean, if you can get the speed for it and get the points in,
Well, and I think another thing too about the tire flip is I get it. Logistically, it's a nightmare hauling tires around.
Right.
It's a bigger trailer. They're huge.
Yeah.
If you're going to have a couple lanes running, you're in these bigger competitions, you generally need two of every size tire you're flipping. That becomes a nightmare because back in the day, you just need one size of everything because you didn't have enough guys anyhow.
Yeah.
So 10 or 12 guys and maybe you had 30 in the whole show. So you had one heavy tire, one light tire. But I'm like that. Welcome back, tire flip.
Yeah.
Great job, Ohio Strongest. Yeah. What do we got next?
We're going to go to Oklahoma. And this one is also the record setter.
Yes, yeah. And listen, this goes without saying. Obviously, there's a depth before dishonor, influence here, as we all know. Hannah Cold Iron is promoting this show, and Hannah is the Strongman Corp chairperson for the state of Oklahoma. I interviewed her last year, and we had a great interview. It was a lot of fun getting to know her. She's very creative with her shows. I love Hannah and what she does in Oklahoma. Because she's always trying to think outside the box. And we know when it comes down to promoting, that's what separates the good shows from the bad shows. You got to have some creativity when it comes to these shows to make it worthwhile for people to remember. She did one in a circus tent last year that I didn't think got enough press. I tried to push it. I get it. It didn't quite get out in the ether like we'd hoped it would. I know the show went off great. It was a lot of fun. But she actually did it because her friend owned an old style circus tent.
Yeah,
which with the bleachers inside of it and everything else, which is super cool. So I get behind this show for two reasons. A, it's Hannah's show. This show has got a history. It's second year. It's doing well. I like the idea that these promoters are ahead of time setting up these record breakers as well. Now, this particular record breakers is all for Oklahoma because she, of course, is going to be there as the state chair, so she can judge all these to make it official. And I think anything outside of that, like for a national record, of course, I think Dion then would have to be there or one of her representatives like Brian for Strongman Corp. So love that. What are the events?
Log clean and press for max, 18-inch deadlift max, the yoke for distance. So you get 60 seconds and specific weight. I think it's 50 feet back and forth. I could be wrong on the distance.
Yeah.
You take it, you drop it, turn around, go back, and you just try to get as far as you can in 60 seconds. Sandbag throw, and then a mystery event.
Love mystery events. I'm glad they're coming back. I had a chat with John Beatty last year. John, of course, is an OG in the sport from Illinois, did the Snowman Classic for years. John was actually discussing coming back with a show with a lot of mystery events in it and said we were really missing mystery events.
Yeah.
And I agree. And he said a lot of times guys don't like competing in them because of the prima donna nature of our sport now.
Yeah.
Guys figure if they don't get a chance to train it, they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I'm with Hannah on this one, as I am with all these other promoters. There's nothing wrong with one mystery event. I assure you, if you're training for the other 4 events, you will figure out that 5th event when you get there. Just hope you're not first.
Yeah.
Because if you're first, you're probably fucked a little bit. That's just the way it goes.
Yeah. And that's always the case with first. I mean, you and I did the Mary Liftmas, and I was first in the open to hold the candy cane hold. And you have no idea how long you want to hold for. You have no idea.
That's the worst, by the way. So, the holds,
so we're holding. I held for 2 minutes 17. I think you were up right after me and went like 2:25.
Intentionally, just wanted to be a couple seconds over you, and it was
done.
done.
You have no idea when you're first doing it. You're like your whole body's shaking, and so you have no idea what to hold for. You have no idea if you're doing well.
Well,
so
that goes without saying with every event, but certainly one you're not used to.
Yeah.
And I like certainly there's some holds coming up in a lot of events I noticed of this year outside of these ones we're talking about. And it helps to be last in those holds. It does help to be last.
Yeah.
I think matter of fact, Strongman Nationals this year, USS Nationals, which we'll talk about that show in a minute, has a hold in it, oddly enough.
Yeah.
I guess easy one to do, right?
Yeah. And then the other one we didn't train for was a yoke squat.
Well, just forget about that. That's not even worth talking about because we'll never see that again.
Right. But that was an interesting one where it's like, just like, if you're throwing a mystery event and it's like something you never heard of, I'm sure that you've trained it some way, somehow, or at least have gotten close. Like,
well, what's interesting about that yoke squat is if you would think with all the safety bar squats guys do, these yoke squats, you'd be good at that, right?
Yeah.
Especially at that 20-inch depth.
Right.
But setting in that 20-inch depth and coming up with 600 pounds on your back, with no momentum or getting into that pocket to be able to set your feet, let's hope we never see that in a strongman competition.
Well, yoke has a weird thing where it has a little bit of slack, depending on which yoke you use. But sometimes we'll have a little bit of slack. So when you're doing that squat, you do the stand. It feels easy at first, and then it sticks, and then you got to press through that as well. And that was just a weird one. But anyway,
it was weird. But get back to her event with the yoke for distance.
Yeah.
I would love to see, and you would have to make the yoke pretty heavy. Yes. I don't like turns. I like straightaways, right?
Yeah.
It'd be like in a farmers for distance.
Yeah.
As a competitor, I would love to just keep walking and not worried about setting down and repicking.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that's actually what'll get a lot of guys.
Yeah.
Is that pick will worm the hell out, especially if they're making 2 or 3 turns with that, much like a farmers for distance or something. Yeah. Boy, it's oftentimes the pick that kills you. But interesting though.
The farmers, there's techniques to that, right? That you can turn around, you can spin it around, you can do the crossover, you can just set down, turn around, pick back up. There's different ways. With a yoke like this, it sounds like it's just you have no option but to set down, turn around, go. And
you're not setting that damn thing down either.
No,
you're running through it every time.
Yeah, you want to tap it and get that breath.
Exactly. It's a different movement altogether.
Yeah.
But nice to see because we often don't see that nowadays, a yoke for distance. You see more of a 30-foot or 50-foot yoke tops.
Yeah.
That's super, super heavy. Of course, this could be heavy as well. We didn't look at the weights. What's the next one?
We've got the Texas Legend.
Texas Legends, yes. First off, kudos to Derek Owens and everything he does there because all of his posters are badass. And I always tell him I want some fucking t-shirts. I gotta. He sells all of his stuff, so I just need to get online and do that. Matter of fact, Derek is selling a little bit of a promo for the U90 Classic out in England. We'll talk about that show too. Remember, we're talking about all American shows, but I want to bring up a couple points before the end of the show. Derek is the, I guess you would call him the United States representative for Luke Davies over from England, U90 Classic with Battle Axe Barbell, selling those shirts for the competitors over there to give back to the U90 Classic prize pool. And I guess you can get them through battleaxebarbell.com. Get on there and check that out. But he always produces some cool shit. I don't know what he's outside of the shirt and printing them off and getting them sold on our side of the pond. But all of his other stuff is super cool. He had a couple with some snakes and some cowboy hats last year. And so I love Derek. Besides that, he's a great promoter. Everything he does there is top-notch, kick-ass. This isn't his first rodeo, no pun intended, down in Texas. But Derek does a great job in everything he does. Because I couldn't get Battle Axe, the Battle Axe event in because it already passed here a couple weeks ago. Of course, I'm going to take his next event. And I wasn't the only one. Texas Legends, that fell into a few people that I reach out to, all felt that should be on the list. So what do we got for the events in that one?
So we've got the Vados log clean and press for reps,
Okay.
which is just a very specific log. We've got a farmer walk. We've got axle deadlifts for reps, sandbag throw, and then sandbag to shoulder.
Damn, that sandbag to shoulder. Here we go again. Come on, goddamn it. Cerebus, make a tire, will you? This is the thing. If they would make a tire, these sandbags would go away.
I mean,
so Cerberus needs to make a tire, everybody. I know, I'm just kidding, of course. They're not going to make a tire, but if they did, they'd be in every event. Yeah, no, it'd be tough to ship. I get it. I'm joking. But so, yeah, so sandbag to shoulder. What were the other ones then?
Sandbag throw, axle deadlift, farmer walk, and then
pretty basic, pretty straight and narrow. Yeah, as it should be, because a lot of the competitors that he gets there for that show often go on to bigger and better shows outside of, and Derek's that kind of guy in the state, much like George is in our state. You know, he produces events that are typical to guys moving on and doing better elsewhere too. So a lot of these events will be pretty standardized. And it's not like we like to see that a lot in Strongman, because we like the idea of that variable, that mystery event, something a little bit different. But let's face it, there are certain events that we're going to see across the board at the higher level that ultimately guys are going to need to become good at.
And sometimes as a competitor, you got to be strategic about what competitions you do, when, how you're going to space them out. And sometimes you just want a straightforward competition that you don't have to train as hard for it, because you've done these events so many times,
or finding the implements for that matter. It makes it really difficult.
So this is perfect for anyone, for your classic strongman amateur show that you can just go
and I know he accommodates all classes down there, and as that show grows and gets bigger towards the end of the sign up, no doubt it's gonna be a pretty full show. What's the next one?
We're gonna do War of the North. I've got one I'm saving for the end. That's my personal.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
We're gonna skip to War of the North.
Now, this to many of you out there is going to seem like I'm playing favorites, and I am not. I am not playing favorites. Listen, God damn it, I'm not. And that's the problem, right? I do this show for Michigan, so everybody out there, every time I mention the Great Lakes Strongest Man, which I'm going to include with War of the North right now, or War of the North, which is George Bullard's new promotion, which is actually a week, 10 days from now. 11 days from now. As you guys get this, will be pretty much right. It'll be right there, and everybody will be taking time off to get to this event at that point. Listen, what George Bullard does with any of his events are like everybody on this list. They are out of the world stellar events. He's constantly upgrading his promotions. He holds nothing back. The Great Lakes Strongest Man is a perfect example of that. 170 competitors annually. He added a pro division this year with USS. Not only is it in a professional baseball field, tastefully done, meaning logistically perfect, not tasteful, logistically perfect.
Right. It's perfectly set up for spectators to be.
Pageantry is beautiful. And it's done in a timely fashion, which, let's not forget, every show we're talking about here, these shows need to actually get done in a timely fucking fashion. They can't be 10-hour shows. No. And George will go through 170 competitors. We'll start at 9 in the morning. We'll be done 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock,
It's crazy.
5 events and 5 exact hours.
With 170 people in 5-6 hours tops. So that deserves mention for any show out there and any promoter out there. But then again, he ups the ante to the War of the North. And he takes a show essentially that's in maybe a 6,000 square foot facility, a rectangle, right? A CrossFit box. And not only are we doing a show in there, but he's completely designed the interior of that and built it, by the way. We've all seen it on Instagram. Top to bottom. I'm talking 10-foot high, 12-foot high walls that look like dungeon walls. And the lights that are all computerized and the smoke machines. He's got a DJ coming in. He built a throne for this thing for the champions to sit on. His long swords as his prizes, which are great. I mean, they're real deal.
He does a great
job. He doesn't cut the corner on anything.
No, he does a great job at keeping a theme very well. So, the awards for Great Lakes is
all baseball stuff. Absolutely, you're right.
And he was selling baseball jerseys just to wear or to buy.
There's a lot of thought that goes into his shows, like a lot of these guys were talking about when it comes to keeping that theme alive.
I think
his poster says it all. It represents. And everything you can think about that it goes into the thought of that poster is going into the thought of that event. By the way, he's also bringing in a bartender. There's gonna be some beer. So it's a 21 and over show.
It starts at what, 10 o'clock or something?
It actually starts at 6. So I talked to George. I got the starts at 6 o'clock. It's gonna end at 9. I have no doubt it'll end at 9. There's only going to be 60 competitors, 60 spectators,
Okay.
because it's a minimum amount of tickets sold, all 21 and over. And George essentially is going to keep the facility open and turn it into a party from 9 to 12.
Okay.
Yeah, because he wants everybody there to lend to the camaraderie of the Great Lakes community all competing. See, that's just another layer that we like to see from these promoters. He's just thinking about what more can I do for all these competitors that support me every year.
Yeah. And
he's giving back to them.
Yeah.
And now I just want to make sure he's bringing in some food, because we're going to need that. I'd see that anywhere on the list. Better bring some damn food in there.
If not,
then I'm going to give this a big
Traverse
thumbs
City,
down.
Though, you can get
he better get some good food too. Yeah. He's not. I don't want to see any my chicken wings would be good. Yeah. Okay. Something like that.
Not.
What do you think?
You want something that you
prime rib or something.
Heavy.
No, yeah, I don't know.
You want all those calories.
He can hardly go wrong. Just bring in a bunch of pizzas.
Yeah, just bring in food. We'll find, but I think George is probably the gold standard right now of promoting.
Again, I don't want to seem like I'm playing favorites, but
he really is doing it. He does a great job. He puts the info out way ahead of time. That's
something else worth noting, actually.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these promoters know better nowadays. These good ones, like Miami's Best is another example. No, I'm sorry, not Miami's Best. Talking about some other shows that I looked at anyhow. They literally will fill up in 2 to 3 days.
Yeah.
These George shows are no different. Within a few days, then you get some people dropping off and filling in.
Yeah.
But if you're going to eyeball one of these shows we're talking about, you better get on them quick. Else you're going to be on a waiting list, and I get it.
Or at least get on that waiting list, because
absolutely, absolutely.
The chances of waiting to even get on the wait list and a spot opening up are very slim with these shows.
Yeah, and listen, these promoters play it by the book, because they're set up logistically to handle so many competitors with these events and with their volunteers and things as well.
Yeah, volunteers, venue. All these things.
You add 30 guys, you're making a nightmare for yourself. It's like you're almost promoting a whole other show the same time you're promoting the show.
Yeah.
Exponentially speaking, it doesn't work the way you think it would just by bringing more guys in to go after a money grab with entries.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, every guy we're talking about on this list that promote all these shows, I highly doubt they're making any money, if at all, and they all deserve something.
Right.
But I highly doubt it, because they put so much back into their shows.
They all work full-time jobs outside of doing these competitions.
Yeah.
And that's the amazing part, is and almost all of them have families too. So it's to have the time to put together a really great show, to have the time to put the promotion together. That's so much more kudos.
These are strong men families or strong women families out there. Yeah. Goes without saying. You're exactly right. That's worth mentioning, because I know the significant others of a few of these guys, and they're all knee deep in it with their spouses, which I think is awesome. So, we and one more note here before we move on to our next one, is sponsors, and these guys do a great job. There's a common denominator behind all these shows. They don't have one or two sponsors; they have several, and they have more than many shows combined would have.
Yeah.
George is an example of that. Derek's always an example of that. Yeah. Obviously, Ragnarok's a huge example of that, because that's a bigger show. But outside of even the large show, like we all say, well, the bigger shows are going to draw more. That's not true.
No.
Not at all. No. These guys just pound the pavement earlier. They get out and they sell their product. They're selling their promotion. And it all starts with what? We just talked about it, that fucking poster.
Yeah.
Get that right, because if you just turn it, guys, and there's a few of you guys out there that will be on my other list that have these shows with these ridiculous posters and all this digital work. Hey, listen, this doesn't take long to make yourself shine the boot a little bit, So in any case, sponsors are a big thing. We'll talk about that a little bit as well. But what's the next show?
Well, we didn't go through the events on that one.
Events. Oh, yeah.
We just went on like 80 tangents.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Here we go. Events for the War of the North.
So you've got a farmer death medley. Farmer carries.
Yep.
Keg press medley.
Yep.
Standard deadlift face-off. And then a yoke carry and a drag as well, or a sled drag.
Sled pull, yeah.
Pull
I think
drag,
it is, yeah.
Yeah.
All great events. We don't have a lot of space to work with in there, so everything's really heavy.
Yeah.
Which is cool. I think 30 foot, 40 foot is about what we're doing on everything. So the deadlift's going to be interesting. That's a face-off.
Mm-hmm.
Just adds to the pageantry of it.
Exactly.
A little bit.
That's, the whole Viking theme going with this. That's such a classic way to really throw that theme together.
Yeah, head-to-head kind of thing. Yeah, absolutely.
With deadlift.
Yep.
So that's a wonderful thing to do right there.
And I know the farmers medley, I know we didn't write down the weights, but again, for these super heavyweight guys or the open guys, I think that's a 350 farmers on that third farmers. Which is nuts.
Yeah, especially on a medley too.
Coming off a 285, 315 to a 350.
Yeah.
We'll see that done. The King is up there. The King will no doubt do it. Erdman's is up there as well. He's going to be another guy. We don't have a lot of guys in that open class, but again, that light and middleweight class up there is really big. He's got a big masters class. There's 9 of us in that. Then the women, a little hit and miss on that. Well, that's for another show though. Okay, next show.
Next one is the Clash of the Titans.
Clash of the Titans. I think you took the information down on this one.
Yeah, I don't have a picture for it that I can see here. I think that's the only one that doesn't have a picture. But it's it's already sold out. 64 competitors sold out. I'm sure there's already a long wait list. So the events are a log ladder. There's a max distance Husafel, which you think would be easy, but I mean, if you go back and watch, I think it was early 2000s World's Strongest Man videos. To see someone even go the whole distance before they turn around was rare. So that's not an easy one. Bag over bar, sandbag over bar, frame carry, and then one that I thought was interesting was a max trap bar deadlift.
I love the trap bar. I'm glad we see that come back.
Yeah. It's been neglected. Even when doing car deadlifts, the trap setup seems to be neglected anymore for just your regular deadlift setup. So it's fun to see the trap bar make a comeback.
I love that trap bar. I just saw Dick Camby doing a big trap bar the other day on Instagram. That's a fun lift. Mm-hmm. We can all appreciate that when we're doing heavy farmers picks. Yeah. Obviously, we got a bit more stability in a trap bar. We should be able to pull a little more with that because we're pulling uniformly with it, not individually. So yeah, that to me is a fun event. I'm glad to see it. So kudos to those guys there. Where was that event at?
I think that is Miami. Also,
I think it is. Yeah, I think you're right. It's in Florida. Darn it, I can't believe I didn't write much down about that. I do have it here though, but yeah, that was one that made the list. There was a few guys that liked that as well. Mm-hmm. Again, there was a common denominator, a common theme going against the 12 or 15 guys that I reached out to and said, hey, just give me 1 or 2 off the top of your head that you really like. Yeah. These all made it 3 or 4 times, which is really cool because it got me thinking it made me think, well, I'm not too far off because I had a lot of these on my list as well. Yeah. So easy to pick. What's the next one?
So the last one, I saved this one for last because I thought when you sent it to me, I thought it was a typo. Yeah. But I searched
it's not a typo.
Search for it, and it is not. True. And it was the gift that just kept on coming and giving.
Yep. Apparently, you don't follow him on Instagram.
I don't.
You should start.
I'm going to after this. It's the Dia del Dildo.
The Dia del Dildo.
Yeah.
Yes.
D cubed.
D cubed. That's on May 6th. That's, of course, many of you know that's Chris Faccio's event. Yeah. Well, listen, Chris likes to have fun. We all know that. Even those of us who have never met him before, the legend of him precedes him. Yeah. Anytime you've seen him judge, generally he was a mermaid last year, and and he's a pretty hairy guy. He's he's not easy to look at. I'm going to tell you right now. He didn't make a good mermaid at all. I mean, he's a bear for sure. I will say that dildo he's got. Well, listen, it's. I don't think anybody's ever used it. It's 60 pounds and it's 3 foot long.
Yeah, it's.
It's huge.
I've got the picture up. Yeah. I mean, it's. Yeah, you're right. It's 3 feet. It's between 50 to 56 pounds. The
funny part about it is he's going to use it in every event.
Every event. Oh, he's got multiple.
So you better be a guy that's got a little humility about you.
I'm 100% going to sign up for this one because
of course you are. Of course you are. That makes complete sense.
You have to, even if you're not planning, if you want nothing to do with this, that's fine. But you have to get on to Iron Podium and read all the info he put in.
Yeah.
Speaking of keeping a theme and everything that's tied together, I'm going to get this giant dildo off the screen here. But the registration fee is $69.
Yes.
And I'm like, he thought
he's left no stone unturned.
Even to the point of a registration fee.
Yeah.
So I was very happy.
Well, listen, I told you this show was going to include some shows that are worth watching.
Yeah.
And I can tell you right now, Chris, if you're not actually live streaming that show, let me know. I'll come down there and I'll put it on YouTube for you. And we'll free live stream that show out to everybody because I don't want anybody to miss this.
Just gonna pixelate
Yeah, no, no, yeah. I mean, YouTube might pixelate that. I don't know. I doubt it. No, please, they won't. We'll just put it in. We'll put it NC-17, adult content only.
We'll throw it up
It'll
on
take them a while to figure out what it really is, actually.
Right.
If anybody complained,
Right.
but that show is going to be one of those ones that is worth watching and worth the price of admission. And that is a show that made the list simply because let's not forget how much fun we have doing this sport.
Yeah.
And guys like Vaccio, they don't forget that. And we never should. And I hope every promoter, sees the levity in this. And maybe I get it. Not on every show we can have this kind of fun, but there are 1, 2, or 3 shows a year that, boy, we love to see this kind of thing. Like what George is doing with the 21 and over. Just something different, completely off the reservation when it comes to show promoting and what he's doing with Dia del Dildo.
Right.
I love saying that, actually. It's like, I can't wait to see the shirt that comes out for this show.
I mean, he needs to make some bottoms for it. That's what he really needs.
Well, I'm sure there might be a whole clothing line that goes along with this show. I'm sure of it. But in any case, I think he's onto something here.
Yeah.
This is going to be the first of many to come. Yeah. I have a feeling that large phallus of a dildo is going to go down into strongman history and maybe around for the next 20 or 30 years, floating between promoter to promoter. Once Chris is, out of, he'll never leave, of course, so he'll be dead before he gives it up. But in any case, that will live on in infamy forever.
Well, now I'm curious he said that they are theme appropriate awards, and I really want to know.
Oh, theme appropriate awards. Yes, yes.
I think that's what he said.
Well,
I really want to know what they are.
I know, with the curiosity, right? And he's, I think he's going to keep that under wraps.
If not, I'll just make my own. That's fine.
Yeah. Well, again, Chris, if you need somebody to come down to help you out with promoting that, I am 100% on board. And matter of fact, that's my birthday. Maybe it was meant to be May 6th. There you go.
And it's also an Ohio show.
It's Ohio. I love Ohio. Yeah. And listen, I can't think of a better way to spend my birthday than be at Dia del Dildo. I mean, listen.
Listen, I'm right there.
All right. Well, anyhow,
you'll watch me do the tallywhacker toss.
Oh my goodness! Yeah. So the events, please.
Even the event names.
Yeah.
So he's got the tallywhacker toss. You toss that 50, 60 pound dildo as far as you can. He's got a pecker press, and this has some added weight to it, so it's an overhead press type thing.
With the actual head of the dildo facing your head as you're pressing up and down. I know that's what he's doing. I can see it already.
I think so.
Okay.
He did say, just be careful not to take too many hits to the face unless that's what you want.
Get a mushroom forehead kind of thing, a big one. Yeah, gotcha.
So there's that. That's for reps. He's got the dong drag, which is a drag. The glory hold. So you get to hold.
Oh my God, the glory hold.
The glory
Are you
hold.
kidding me?
So you're holding his rubber dick there.
Yeah.
Weenie waddle, which is a Husafel carry.
Oh no.
And then
I'm picturing this, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, that's the best part.
The visual of this is just.
It's not solid.
I gotta be there.
The thing is, I'm gonna put the picture back up. It's not supposed to be fully solid. It's got a little bit of flimsiness to it. So there's gonna be some movement.
I don't know. The thing looks pretty fucking solid. I mean, I hope it does have some flimsiness to it.
I think
because it's gonna lend to this up big time.
It's gonna make it so much.
Oh
better.
My God, yeah. Right.
And then the last one is the bean over Frank, which is a yoke. It's a stone over yoke bar. And on the yoke, I don't know if the bar. I'd have to go back and read. I don't know if the bar itself is the dildo or if the dildo is sticking out, and you're putting it over the dildo, and I don't know, but I do know it is incorporated.
It's the bean over
Frank.
Bean over Frank.
Yeah. So the bean is the stone. So stone over bar on that.
Oh my God. Well, listen.
I had so much fun.
He is.
I shouldn't say we all, but those of us who survived 2020, we deserve the time to laugh. We deserve to have just these goofy one-off.
Listen, you can survive any year, and we can have these moments here.
You're right, but I
I hope this is a show that goes off as well as I think it's going to go off, and we repeat it every year because I can see this being a crowd favorite for sure, and maybe even a competitor favorite. However, I'll hold back that until we see how this competition goes off. Yeah, you may not want to do this event more than once because the memes that come off this event are going to be stupid. I'm
going to love it.
Yeah. Anyhow, what a great way to kind of finish those 10. So there were some notables. Obviously, Nebraska's strongest, and which is a big one. The Big Tex Classic, Robbins Posado's down there. Big Tex, of course, the gym down there is world famous, really. Yeah, and I also had Louisiana Strongest on there. Listen, guys, liking any one of these shows is subjective, of course. We all have our favorites. We all have our hometown favorites. And we certainly can identify some shows that are bigger than others and some we kind of gravitate more towards than others simply because of the promotion, the pageantry of the promotion, the originality of it, like in Dia del Dildo. Once again, I get to say it again. But in any case, I know there's a ton out there. So I wasn't meaning to leave anybody out for sure. These are just ones that kind of came to my attention and others in my circle that we all appreciated and we thought we'd mention. But again, there's probably going to be 150 plus or more strongman events across the United States this year.
Oh, yeah.
If that doesn't tell you how big this sport is getting, I don't know what does, because you only have to go back 15, 20 years to remember there might have been only 40 or 50 shows or less.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, like, strongman goes through seasons where it's huge, everybody wants to do it, and then it fades out for a while, and it's really in those moments where we keep it alive and we start to adapt and get creative that you see it come back to life again.
So, well, there are those down times, and what we really appreciate now is that it was largely a Midwest sort of East Coast thing for a long time. And now you can always find a place to travel to where the sun's shining to get outside to do a strongman competition. Yeah. Travel becomes a little bit more of an issue, but I got something to talk about. But next show, we'll talk about that. But let's go on to a couple other events here that I know they're going to come about that I think necessarily wouldn't make this list, because if you guys noticed, I didn't really include any national or regional shows from Strongman Corp or from USS when it comes to their national pro series shows, their nationals, their regionals, anything like that. Listen, we can all acknowledge those are going to be all big shows. I think really what we want to kind of recognize from those shows, if they're promoted properly, and they should be, because they are those shows that are put on the top shelf to represent everybody within the strongman community. I have some concerns about those shows, and one of them is, of course, the size of these shows. We talked about them before. I understand USS Nationals, and I want to be there. Listen, I want to be there to compete in that show. One of the things that frightens me the most about that show is they're saying there could be 1,000 competitors in that show. Now, I've heard of stories past, and I've been a part of some years beyond that, that have gone into 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 plus hour shows. There's not a guy on this planet that wants to compete in a one-day show that lasts 12 hours.
No.
So I hope whatever they're doing down there for that show, and also Strongman Corp and everything else, they're learning how to button these shows down, because it will be a shit show if it goes as long as I think some of these shows can go. So God bless Strongman Corp. God bless USS when it comes to these bigger nationals and regionals that they're going to be throwing. More concerned about nationals, of course. If they don't get those right, I think the audience is going to start to say, I don't need this show anymore.
Yeah.
So I hope it works, because I know last year was kind of that way. I know a lot of guys will get to that 4th and 5th event and say, I'm just going home.
Yeah.
I'm done. Listen, they're not making the podium. They're not in the top 10. They're not interested in sticking around for another 3 or 4 hours, and they're just leaving. We don't want to see that. So,
I mean, if it's me by the 5th event, by whatever hour it might be, I'm going to be out of food. So,
well, if it's me, because I'm an old guy, essentially,
right,
my body is going to tell me to fuck off at that point. Yeah, you've kept the wheels in this wagon long enough, Joe. We're ready to shut down for the night. And no matter how much more pre-workout you take, we're not starting back up for you. And I know, especially with Masters Nationals, a lot of guys I know going there for that particular show, I know that's on their mind. Listen, so I hope they get it right. I don't think there's much more that needs to be said about that.
Split up enough to where it can work. It's just, it's got to be buttoned down quite a bit.
Well, and another thing too, we have to, and not that I know any of these promoters outside of maybe interviewed 1 or 2 of them or know them through other people, or have met 1 or 2 myself, but I don't know every promoter out there. There are some that are more qualified than others to run certain types of events. And I think as we progress through the strongman community, we're going to identify those that are capable of doing these bigger events and doing them the right way. And they're the guys that we already see doing these small shows the right way. And these are the shows that these are the promoters that the organizations need to approach, because they need to keep an eye out for these bigger and better amateur promoted shows and say, okay, listen, you're the kind of guy we want to promote this show for us.
Right.
What can we do to get you on board to promote that show? And I think kind of the way it works out right now is these people volunteer for it. And I'm not suggesting listen, we love that. Thanks for being a part of that. And everybody can appreciate the volunteer nature of that. But again, that resume needs to be there when we start growing this sport into bigger and better opportunity.
Yeah. Well, in generations, I mean, you've got the next, you always got to, we don't like to think of it, but we got to be looking out for who's the next up and comer to take over and really move the sport in the next direction that it needs to go to.
That's right.
It's got
Absolutely.
their finger on the pulse, and
Yeah.
we always have to keep an eye out for that.
That is the evolution of any sport
Yeah.
to make it better, of course. So anyhow, that's all I'm going to say about Strongman Corp and USS when it comes to their bigger promotions. Is I know they understand this. These are two people that have been in the sport since its conception, essentially, and they understand what it means to be able to promote a show and to continue to elevate these shows to a higher and higher level. And we'll talk about more of that in the future because I know Willie pretty well, and I know, of course, know Deanna. I haven't talked to her more recently, but Willie and I have conversations frequently, and he fills me in on things that are going on, and I appreciate that. They're very transparent about this stuff, so I know that there's a pulse on it, or they got their finger on the pulse, which is cool. Another show I wanted to point out, and I didn't see anything about it, Chad, but I know it's going to be out there. I know Chad Coy is going to do the Central States again this year. At least you better, because we know that everybody loved to see that show back after last year, after it took a bit of a hiatus, and what is the longest running show in Strongman history, for that matter. I think 17 or 18 years in a row. Then it took a little break and came back, of course, I think, if my history is correct on that. That was a big part of the Clash Masters last year. I don't think Chad, from what I understand, is going to do a Clash Masters, but being a master himself, being an OG in the sport, I think he's bringing back a Masters competition, a big one, to the Central States this year. So the Central States, to me, that is just a give me. Chad Coy's bringing that back. Chad, I think you are, and I'm just going to say you are. So don't let the rest of us down. I know you're going to bring back Central States.
If you weren't, you are now.
You are now, yeah. But I know Chad, of course, wants to do that show. I've heard it through the grapevine, and I, of course, will support that show to the end of time. It was one of the very first shows that I was ever a part of, and, of course, it was always a big show every year to see Central States come along. So glad to see that that's back. Another show that I want to point out, too, is OSG, and people say, well, why didn't you talk about OSG today? Well, listen, I don't think all OSG fits into this category at all. OSG is OSG. It's always going to be OSG. Listen, Lynn Morehouse does a great job promoting that show. We can all appreciate that. Listen, nobody's a fan of how long it takes. Nobody's a fan of the downtime involved in that show. But listen, when you're dealing with 300 plus, 400 athletes, there's no right or wrong way to do this unless you're going to throw 2 OSGs every year, one for men and one for women, shorten it down a little bit. I don't know what the answer is. I'm sure that they talk about it all the time. How do we make it better? How do we make it more efficient? How do we make it so the show doesn't last 10, 12 hours in a single day? Listen, I'm not sure there's an answer to that. Right. And sometimes there's going to be a one-off for these shows. When they're so big, there's just some of the shit you got to deal with. It's just the way it works. Now, everything else about that show is fantastic. I mean, the equipment they use is fantastic, and the way he takes care of his athletes and everything else, all the intangibles. So you know what? It's just one of those shows, if you want to compete at it, you want to be considered one of the best in the world, you're just going to deal with some of the other issues that show may have that maybe are just a little bit more of an enigma, would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it goes without saying about OSG. As far as the pro shows, let's talk about that for a minute. First one comes to mind is Clash of the Coast. Listen, I'm a big fan of Clash of the Coast, just like everybody out there is. And as we all know, Clash of the Coast went through a bit of restructuring. There's a new sheriff in town, and his name's Tyler Purdue, and he's running with Clash of the Coast right now and making some internal changes to it, getting kind of the growing pains of Clash back on track, taking care of some of the commitments they need to take care of. He's doing a great job doing that. I think everybody is expecting another big year out of Clash in South Carolina this year, as I am. If you looked at that roster of athletes, it's no different than it has been in years past. Matter of fact, I would argue it's even better this year as it compared to last year. And last year was one that you would say, can it get any better than this? It has. I know Clash in New Jersey's coming up. We're talking about this show right now. First week of February, Clash New Jersey's coming up. I think that's the last qualifier before, of course, the big Clash show out in March at Clash of the Coast. I can't wait for this, and I can't wait to see what Tyler's done with some of the changes. I know many of the athletes are excited about him taking over Clash and representing Clash moving forward. That's a brand that we all want to continue to get behind, and I'm still behind it. And listen, I know there's some guys out there and some girls that are a little bit on the fence about this, but listen, everybody makes mistakes, and there's always been issues. If there's any issues with anybody out there, I always say everybody deserves a second chance, and I'm not even suggesting that none of this is anything detrimental.
More so the events, like the organization, maybe not organization, the competition itself.
Yeah.
Because they went through the restructuring, and
it's tough.
Yeah, and so
listen, that was a lot. If you think about Clash when it first came out of the gate, that boy, that talk about hit the the
pavement running there.
Pavement running. I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, that shot up to the moon like in its first year. And with that's going to come a little bit of growing pain.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're going to put the cart before the horse.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of situations, when you're dealing with the logistics of a show like this, when it comes to your athletes and everything else. And I think that's kind of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. It's still, listen, Tyler's not looking at that as any issue at all. I've talked to him. I have several conversations with him. You know, he's looking forward and saying, hey, I've got this and we're going to run with this and continue to make this the best show of 105s that the world has ever seen. And I believe that that's going to happen. And I cannot wait for Clash of the Coast. I see the roster. I see who they got there. Listen, this is going to be a repeat from last year and even better with the athletes they got out there. And if I can find a way to make it, there I am. So Clash on the Coast is a show that we're looking forward to in two reasons. There's been a change. There's a new sheriff in town, like I said.
Mm-hmm. So
what Tyler is going to do to put his stamp on that show a little bit. Can't wait to see that. And of course, I can't wait to see it because I can't fucking wait to see it. It's Clash.
Right.
I mean, can't wait to talk about this again and see who the baddest 105er on the planet is, because we can all argue it comes from that show.
Mm-hmm.
And I guarantee you with Andrew Clayton there, that's going to make this show. I can tell you nobody wants it more than I shouldn't say that. I know a lot of those guys, but I got to know Andrew Clayton a little bit in recent months, and he's a guy that I know is looking forward to this show more than any. So, and there's a big John Stacey, a buddy of mine, of course, you know, with Thick, Strong, and Awkward podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a chance to compete at his very first Clash. I know he's excited about that. So just like Clash in the past, we've got this new crop of 105ers coming up that are going to really be pushing hard to make it to that day too. And you got these guys that are seasoned that have been there, like Tyler Young, like Matt McKeegan, that it's common ground for them to make it every year to the finals. So it's going to be interesting to see that way that show shakes up. And it's what we love to see in our sport. And that's going to lead me on to a segue to the third show we're not talking about today, or that I'm going to talk about.
We're not talking about, but we are.
World's Strongest Man. I won't say anything more about World's Strongest Man than, well, I shouldn't say that. I'm going to make it sound like I'm going to cut it short. I'm not. Listen, it's Brian Shaw's last year in World's Strongest Man.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the world's going to be watching. I'm a huge fan of Brian Shaw.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of the highlights of Strongman in the history of Strongman, as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, by far one of the strongest people ever walked
That,
Earth.
besides that, right?
Yeah.
He's probably represents the sport of Strongman better in the United States than anybody ever has in the history of the sport, and still continues to do that with Shaw Classic, which of course would make that
Well,
list.
plus, I mean, his personality, he's one of the just nicest,
Lovable guys.
people.
Sure he is. Yeah, absolutely. Listen, Brian's a good dude, and this is going to be his last year, which is funny, right? I mean, guy can continue to do it.
Oh yeah.
Brian's the kind of guy that you don't want to see going to the master's class if you're a master.
Right.
He'll just, I don't think that's what Brian's going to do. Although it would be fun to see Brian a few years from now go like Eddie Hall's thinking about doing.
Yeah.
Let me just come back and fuck around for a little bit.
Yeah.
But this is a year here that I think the whole world's behind Brian to win that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, he's going to make it to the finals. I have no doubt about that.
Right. I mean, he always does.
He always does because he's that good, no matter how long he's been competing.
Right. I mean, you hear all the criticism of, you know, he's past his prime and all these things. Is like, no, he's not. He's still up on the podium, or at least real fucking close every single year.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
These are against the top people in the world.
4 wins, 3 seconds, I think. 2 I mean,
4. Yeah,
I think 10 times or 9 times he's been on the podium.
I can't remember if he's got the record for most podium or not, but I mean, if he doesn't, he's pretty damn close. Like he's
that's interesting. I'm surprised I don't know that. Most podiums, it might be him.
I think it is him.
Yeah, but he's that guy, right?
Yeah.
And I think the only thing that I would say negatively about World's Strongest Man, that's why I'm only bringing up Brian Shaw. Yeah. And if this wasn't Brian Shaw's last year competing at World's Strongest Man, I wouldn't even uttered World's Strongest Man here today on the show.
Yeah, that's fair.
And the reason I say that is because until World's Strongest Man gets it right, until they take 30 qualifying guys and put them all in the same class to qualify, top to bottom, 1 through 30, just like OSG does, I don't believe in that show as legitimate. I want to see 30 guys compete to qualify out of one class, not 5 or 6 different qualifiers. Yeah. That would shake things up. Yeah. That's what we want to see. That will lend more legitimacy to what some would argue is more of a television show than a strongman competition. Yeah. So I'll leave it at that. Any other shows that I'm not thinking of that should have been on this list? And there's a ton of them, of course. Let's see. What do I got? Central States.
I mean, we've got the Shaw Classic. We've got
Shaw Classic. Listen, let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah.
Shaw Classic to me is the show in the United States by far.
Yeah.
By far, the way he does that in Colorado and as big as that show is, and he's packing that place out, that is the Giants Live of the United States. Yeah. When you see those pictures of the Giants in those packed stadiums, you're seeing that with the Shaw Classic. And I think what he did introducing those amateur classes now, I think Tom Evans won that one last year. That's awesome for those guys. And I think, and it's it's the biggest stage for those open heavyweights to compete at,
Right.
which we need more of that. Of course, we could talk for a whole nother show about how we need a little bit more visibility at other open heavyweights throughout the strongman community. Shaw Classic provides that at a great level for those guys. So I love seeing that. And of course, the women being there. And one more show that we should note, right? One more. I'm just thinking about it. And it can't be said enough, that Arnold Pro Invitational for the women.
Yeah.
For the women, man. The guys, I could give two shits. Honestly,
Right.
that's fodder to me anymore. I don't really care about the big stage with the guys much anymore. And maybe because to me, I'm old school. I remember the Savicus days, and to me, that was the coolest time. But to me, that is a groundbreaking show for the women in strongman or strong woman. Let's say they're a category of their own anymore. Yeah. Remember, you say strong man, strong woman, doesn't matter. Strong man. No, it does. It does matter to me. It's strong woman, strong man. To everybody else, you can choose which direction you want to go in. But those are strong women, need to be recognized as so, and they also need to be paid for their performance. And they're getting there, and they got a lot of money coming for the show. And boy, if you look at the way these women are training for this right now, Nadia and Victoria, of course, Hannah and Melissa Peacock, and I watch their shit all day long. And I'm more glued to what they got going on right now than anybody else in the sport, a strong woman or man for that matter. Because this show is going to be a show of shows, the inaugural show, as far as I'm concerned.
You know, I mean,
in
Arnold,
the United States to represent pro women.
I mean, Arnold held that title for so long, like it was bigger than Worlds for a while there. You know, it was the most important show was the Arnold Classic, and so to make that for women now,
by far,
is huge. And it's going to overlap what Arnold Classic used to be.
Well, and I appreciate the invitational. We talked, and I had my rant a while back, my rogue rant, and I'm not kissing Rogue's butt at all here because I might be. Listen, there's some things you're not going to like that I don't like. Not that I'm anybody. Doesn't mean I don't love you. Listen, what Rogue does for the sport is great. And what their opportunity to provide for these women is fantastic. Again, invitational is always one of those things. They hope they get the right people there. Listen, outside of maybe one little hiccup with their invitation, as far as I'm concerned, just my personal opinion, they got it right, baby. Yeah, those are the best women. Rebecca Roberts should probably be there from England, of course, and you can argue a couple other from across the pond, but I say they got 7 out of 10 pretty right, and that's awesome to see in an invitational because that is not an easy thing to do, and there's a lot more politics involved in that. Yeah. And we may never see that again, is what I'm getting at.
Right.
We may look at this first year representing the best of what all the years to come are going to bring. But again, Rogue, how about the other Rogue show? Of course, the Rogue Invitational and the men's pro that we saw there. That was just the spectacle that is. Yeah. I think that's another show we can all look forward to seeing this year. Yeah. The implements and apparatus by themselves we're seeing. Yeah. Then, of course, the same old suspects were there doing well. Trey Mitchell and Novikov and of course Lisis and these guys, but these guys are the best in the world. We're going to repeat their names over and over again this year. It's a hard fraternity to crack, that top echelon of open heavyweight men. However, I will say this, that I implore promoters out there to get creative with their open heavyweight shows, to give more highlight and more visibility to our American open heavyweights than just the 3 or 4 that we often talk about in our conversations, because there's a lot of strong guys out there. And Luke Davies made a kind of a joke, and I called him today. I said, was that a real statistic you made about OSG where the top 3 guys that, what do you say, outside of the top 3 guys at World's Strongest Man, none of them would have made the finals at OSG? And Luke says, no, I just made that up. Yeah. I goes, oh, thank God I called you because I was about ready to quote you. But he did make a point. And the point was, that's how much great open talent is out there. Yeah. That's not being recognized right now because a bit of the politics of the sport spread those open heavyweights way too thin. Yeah. And we don't get a chance as fans of the sport to really get a good look at who's really out there like we do in some of these other categories, because they're given better platforms to compete on. And we're, or at least we're trying to create that for them, right? So I implore all you promoters out there, get real creative for us, for our open heavyweight guys this year. They can use the love for sure. Anything else to add, my friend?
Not that I can think of.
You've been a big help on the show today. Of course, I'm trying to talk Cody into helping me produce all of my shows, including the ones where I ramble on for an hour that aren't even as engaging as this. But, I do like to look at you. You're a handsome guy.
I'm glad you do, because you're keeping me off camera, and I feel like that's that you're the attractive one.
Well, you listen, I didn't say you were easy to look at. That's why. That's why it's tough. We got to shave that squatchy beard off you.
No, that's
in case you want to find him. He is called the Skunk Ape on Instagram.
Yeah.
And we'll post you with this show and stuff. But in any case, thanks for joining me, everybody. I appreciate it. This was kind of our little highlight show to highlight the best shows that we think are going to be fun to watch. Keep an eye on in the country this year, United States. Oh, U90 Classic overseas. We talk about any overseas people. That's okay. This is a United States show today.
Right.
However, we know we got a lot of good things happening overseas. Promoters like Luke Davies, of course, U90 Classic. That's going to be fun. Of course, you guys can get on Gym Life Media and check out all of our U90 Classic content that I'm putting out there to help Luke promote that show. That's going to be the world of worlds out there for the U90 guys. So anyhow, check that out. Thanks for joining me today. Stay tuned. Stay strong.